Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming today in this panel during ARIES 2025. I'm so happy to have you here in our panel called the War on Facts, Lessons Learned from All Over the World. I'm happy to moderate this panel. I'm Rabeb Alwi, I'm from Tunisia, and I'm the director of BN Check Tunisia. And I'm happy to have next to me our prestigious guests coming from all over the world. Like the title of the session, we'll be having experiences from Brazil, from Italy, from India, from the UK. And I'm so happy to hear from their experience. Just to remind you, this is a safe place. You have the freedom to ask your questions. In the end of the session, we'll be having like 15 to 10 minutes for you to ask your questions. And if you have any comments or any remarks or anything that you want to share with us during the session today. So as I said, we are here in this panel coming from different parts of the world. I'm so happy to have Mr. Peter Confield-Jones. He's the founder of Africa Check, a researcher from University of Westminster. I'm so happy also to have Daniel Bramati from he's the editor of Stadao Verifica from Brazil, coming from Sao Paulo. Thank you for coming today. Also, we have Francesca Capoccia, fact checker at Facta from Italy. Thank you so much for coming, Francesca. And last not least, we have Rajneel Kamath from India. He's a senior fact checker from News Checker from India. Thanks a lot for coming today, and thanks for having this time to share your experience, because today we choose this title of the session, The War on Facts, because there is a huge war, I would say, on fact checkers and the message of the truth, let's say, today. So I'm going to start with you, Francesca, from Italy. Thanks again for coming to our panel today. And I will start my question about the challenges. Just to remind you that we will be talking about challenges today, but also we will talk about solution. I would love to hear from you in the end of the session, the solution that you propose. But first of all, I would love to hear from you. What are the challenges that you are facing? I will ask the same question for you all. I would love to hear from each one of you. Especially today in 2025, we face a convergence of new technology, legal pressure, and organized disinformation. So I would love to hear from you, from your vantage point, what is the single biggest threat today to the basic public agreement on facts? Is it the scale of AI-generated content, political and judicial weaponization, erosion of trust in institutions, or something else that you want to add? So the floor is yours, Francesca.
Well, thank you for the invite and for being here. I'd like to answer this question, like seeing what happened this year. So like I prepared some slides, and so as you can see here, there are like some big challenges that we had to encounter in 2025, and this is they are like the main topic where disinformation spread these years, and they are not just from Italy, because as you can see, there's I think maybe just like one or two topic just in Italy, because also like if we think now in a world, it's not possible to think about just one country and the other. So as the information spread, that's also about this and misinformation. And yeah, so like I think that this year started not like in a good way, because on January we woke up with the news from Meta that was not founding anymore the third fact-checking program. They did in the US, but it was like a threat also for the other fact-checkers around the world. So of course, like the decision was like connected to the US election because of Donald Trump, but it's also like because fact checkers right now are not seen like in a good way. You know, they told us that we do censorship. You know, that we don't want people to speak up, but of course that's not the case. Everybody knows that. And so that's one of the big challenges, I think, because without funding, it's hard to do our job. And so that was like the first monitor. And then, like, of course, over the years, over the month, we got new challenges, and these challenges were related with information. So, like, because if we think about disinformation, they spread connected to what's happening in the world. So, like, for example, we got the LA wildfires, we've got the Ukraine war still going on, and even like it's been already 3 years, there's still a lot of disinformation about it. And of course, the genocide in Gaza, it's still going on, and still disinformation incoming, especially during August and September with the global Sumud flotilla. We saw like this new wave of disinformation against activists, against journalists also that were on the boat. So it's also like about trying to step down the credibility of journalists in general. So we have to think also about that, because it's not just checking the news, but it's just fact checking also, like the way news is spreading. So for example, hate speech is another big problem, and is strictly related to fake news, because disinformation goes on, and it's a way also to spread hate speech, and hate speech is based on false information. Because if we think about, for example, the UK protests against migrants, they are fired because of misinformation. So that's also one thing. So yeah, I think that we have a lot of challenges.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Grazie mille. Thank you for mentioning also what happened in the beginning of this year with the decision of Meta. And also, like a few days ago, we heard that the US also will restrict visas for fact checkers. So we see that the war is not only coming like from these conspiracies or the social media, it's coming also from politicians, and also it's affecting like also the obtention of the visa for fact checkers. So thanks a lot for mentioning this. And I will ask the same question to our second guest, Mr. Peter Confield-Jones, coming from the University of Westminster. You are a researcher and the founder of Africa Check. Thanks again for coming here. And would love also to ask you the same question when it comes to threats.
Thank you. Yeah, so I looked at the question that you asked, and so you asked about 3 different types of challenges that information integrity, that fact-checking the whole community is facing, and you said one other, and the other, I think, underpins is the reasons that we're vulnerable to all the others. So it's a lack of media literacy. Media literacy is often given lip service by governments. It's very rarely, there's a very small number of countries that bring it into schools, bring it into the education system systematically. But if there were to be widespread, credible media literacy, misinformation literacy, understanding of this field, a lot of the challenges of AI-generated misinformation, the challenges of information that we distrust, would be far greater, would be far lesser challenges. So I think the biggest, and fact-checking has a huge role to play. The fact-checking community has a huge role to play in building up people's misinformation literacy, in the way that we write our fact checks, in the fact that we're producing fact checks, in the way that we write them, in the way that we present them through videos and short form, and the way that we can then work with the wider fact-checking community. So the thing I just wanted to say, so I was asked to present just a couple of slides, and I was trying to interpret what we mean by the war on facts. And I'd make the point that it's not simply the war on fact checkers. So I'm working at the moment in a university. Academic research of misinformation, disinformation is being defunded in the United States. And you mentioned the ban on visas. So people who work in academic, in the name of freedom of expression, people who publish research into an information problem are being banned from entering a country. It's quite extraordinary. So there's reduced funding for research. There are attacks on evidence, attacks on science, and a lot of this is blamed on false claims of bias in the fact-checking community and in the academic community that researches this. And one of the conclusions that I've come to over the last years working in this field is that one of the things that we lack in the community is a systematic way to explain the choices we make. And the most fundamental choice we make is what we choose to research or what we choose to fact check. And so with some colleagues in the region, I've been at a workshop this week, looking at questions we can ask ourselves, questions about when there are hundreds of millions of claims that we could check every day, how do we choose the ones to check? And so part of that is my own focus is on information harm, but there are many other reasons. There are many credible reasons why we choose claims to check. But I think that's interesting, or that sounds fishy to me, isn't a very systematic way that we can defend what we're doing. I compare it to a triage process. You wouldn't want to have somebody making a triage process in a hospital and saying, well, that person over there looks interesting. That person over there has lots of friends. They're circulating widely. I'm going to help them. No, you want a systematic medical process of choosing well. And I don't think we've had that in the communities so far. This is an overcomplicated looking diagram, because I suppose this is my justification of why it is actually quite complicated to work this sort of thing out. And a simple interpretation that says there are ways that we can identify. I've been doing work with Full Fact, with Africa Check, with AFP, and with colleagues in this region. We've created a study looking at the potential harm of the different types of misinformation people are fact checking. And it takes those three fundamental questions about the potential impact of that misinformation, which I can go through in a 3-day workshop, probably not in 3 minutes. What does that produce? It produces data. Data, I think, is the most valuable tool we can ever have to fight back against accusations of bias. Saying, no, I'm not biased, I promise, I'm really nice, isn't a very effective way at arguing at immigration when your visa has been refused. Data may not work, but it's the best tool we have. And with the skills of the people in the room, we have an ability to feed problems of countering media, the lack of media literacy around the harm that misinformation causes, and also around allowing for greater freedom of expression where we have differences of interpretation of things and they don't cause any harm.
Thank you, Peter. You talked about the attacks on science, on evidence. You talked about the challenges that we are facing today as a fact checker, and also how we choose the facts to check. And this is really important. I'm promoting your book. If you want to learn more and to hear more about what Peter Coliff-Jones, our guest today, is talking about, you can also check your book. Thank you, Peter, for that. Let me now take the flight. I'm traveling to India now. I'm so happy to have Rajneel Kamath with us from News Checker. And really, for me, it's important to hear from Rajneel. You are coming from India and you are here today in the Middle East. And I wanted to know, do we share the same challenges and threats?
Yeah. So, to talk about the challenges, I first wanted to talk about this image. I do want to give a disclaimer that I use Nano Banana for the infographic, but the numbers are researched by me. It's not AI. But when you look at this number, South Asia, which consists of India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Maldives, Myanmar, and Bhutan, Collectively, this region is home to 2 billion people. That's 25% of the world's population. And out of 2 billion people, nearly 1.4 billion people are online. The internet is a lifeline to their jobs, to education, to making payments, and even consuming news. If you look at, I think, the Reuters digital news report, you'll realize that in this part of the world, majority of the people depend on social media for the news. And what we've seen this year by all platforms is a wholesale pullback on trust and safety. Now, that approach might work for the United States given the political situation there, but in a region like South Asia, it's not necessarily tenable. You look at YouTube, you look at WhatsApp, you look at Instagram or Facebook, all these platforms have the largest number of users anywhere in the world in India. TikTok, of course, is banned, but TikTok is very prominent in other regions, right? And if you look at, it's a very crucial time for the region as well. In 2000, about a little over a year ago, the government in Bangladesh collapsed after youth protests. Something similar happened this year in Nepal. In India, we've had a military conflict with neighboring Pakistan. We have state elections that are coming up. We've also had a terrorist bomb blast very recently. In Myanmar, after the coup that happened, the first election is going to happen. There has been the Rohingya crisis. Sri Lanka, of course, has already had elections, but they're overcoming an economic crisis, which also led to the downfall of their government. What's common to all of these governments, though, is that they all recognize that misinformation is a problem. Something needs to be done about it. In Nepal, for example, the reason why the protests happened, because of which the government fell, is because the government banned all social media platforms. So overnight, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube, there was no Instagram, there was no WhatsApp. There was only Viber and there was TikTok. But that led to a lot of discontent amongst the youth who protested. And in a couple of days, politicians' houses were burnt, the parliament was burnt, the government offices were burnt. And that tells you how dominant social media plays a role in this. Bangladesh is now going to have elections in February, followed by Nepal in March. So you have very crucial elections coming up. There could be political tensions that are going to happen there. Now, given this context, they recognize that misinformation needs to be tackled. Now, the question is, they also want fact-checking to happen. They just don't want fact-checkers to do it. They want themselves to do it, right? They've all set up their fact-checking wings where they believe denials are fact-checks. I was going through one of the fact-checks that a ministry had issued, and the claim was 25,000 people have died in accidents. And the fact check said, it's not 25,000, it's actually 24,800 something. You know, that's how the government is now issuing fact checks. And it's really ridiculous how they're doing it. And we've seen that these governments in different ways are asking platforms that they want fact checking or they want to combat misinformation or disinformation, but they don't necessarily see fact checkers as one element to help them in that fight. As I say, as fact checkers, we have no allies, we have no friends. And this year specifically, we've been dropped like hot potatoes and we've become untouchable all of a sudden.
Thank you so much, Rajnail Kamath from News Checker. Just to remind you that this is a safe place and we will be having a time for your questions in the end of the session. We are here together to talk, to discuss, and to hear also from you. So if you have any questions or comment, please stay with us till the end of the session to ask our panelists here today. From India, I'm going to Brazil now. I'm so lucky. I'm going to Sao Paulo, exactly. And I'm happy to have today Mr. Daniel Bramati. He's the editor of Estadão Verifica. Thanks a lot for coming here, and obrigada. I need to show my Portuguese. Obrigada. So thanks a lot for coming here today in this session. And you have the same question when it comes to threats.
Okay. Obrigado. I don't have a presentation, but I want to read something to you very briefly. I would like to talk about a war on facts that ended badly for those who promoted it. Less than 2 months ago, the Brazilian Supreme Court sentenced a group of military officers to prison. They were accused of being part of the so-called Disinformation hub of a coup plot to keep President Jair Bolsonaro in office, despite the fact that he lost the election of 2022. Spreading disinformation is not a crime in Brazil. However, these officers used social media to spread disinformation in order to commit other crimes that are in our penal code, including promoting a coup d'etat and abolishing the rule of law. The justices who sentenced these officers stated that they used disinformation as a weapon of war, that they acted as a digital militia. And how exactly? Before the last presidential elections in 2022, they used social media and official channels of communication to disseminate a series of lies regarding electronic voting machines and the electoral system. They said that the system was rigged to give the victory to the opposition. They tried to generate social chaos, inciting the population against institutions, to create the environment of instability necessary for a coup. And they tried to coerce authorities by attacking them and their families in social media. If Bolsonaro won the election, okay, fine, but he lost. But if he lost, the conditions would be set to him to try to overturn the results. And that's exactly what happened. Bolsonaro did not recognize President Lula's victory. He mobilized his allies to protest in front of military installations, demanding that the armed forces take action regarding the alleged fraud. And the plan didn't work, basically because only the Navy supported the idea of blocking the inauguration of the elected president. And also because our judiciary system rejected all the false allegations of fraud. Bolsonaro is now in jail, serving a sentence of 27 years. Estadão Verifica, my team, we fact-checked 143 different false claims regarding electronic voting machines in 2022 and prior years. Other Brazilian fact-checkers also had a lot of work with this type of rumors because they were basically everywhere. This was not completely evident at the time, but with every fact check, with every effort to limit the effects of the lies, we were resisting an attempt to destroy our democracy. I truly believe that we fact-checkers made an important contribution to the failure of the coup. However, Brazil would never have been able to stop the plot if the army said yes. And the perpetrators were punished only because the Supreme Court decided to defend the rule of law instead of bending the knee. So I think this is, in this case, illustrates the importance of our work, but also the limits of our reach. And to answer directly your question, I think the main challenge that we have today is the alignment between big tech and political groups who despise our work and falsely accuse us of censorship. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Muito obrigada, Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing with us, because maybe because Brazil is far, so we are not following the Brazilian elections and what happened between Bolsonaro and President Lula. So thanks a lot for sharing with us your experiences. It's really crucial, and I'm happy today because I heard some perspective from Rajneel, who talked about Bangladesh and Myanmar, especially after the coup in Myanmar. Then we listened to you, Mr. Daniel, about the election in Brazil. Now I would love to hear from you about the role of fact-checkers, especially today fact-checking has moved from debunking individual claims to defending system and institutions. So for you, how should the role and responsibility of fact-checkers evolve in 2026? Should fact-checkers become organizers, litigators, platform liaisons, educators, or all above this? I will start with you, Francesca.
Yeah, okay. So I think that we have to have in mind that fact checkers are journalists. So our principle is to check the fact, as a journalist should always do. And so that's the basic, because sometimes it's also confused, because as we said before, like sometimes people think that fact checkers are just, for example, some part of Meta that wants to censorship you, you know? So I think that also like make understand people what fact checkers are and what they're doing is really important. So like also like being transparent about the funding we receive. And so that's one thing. And I think that in our, I think that we still need to debunk single claims, of course, like the viral one, because it's important. But also like we have to talk about the narratives behind all of these claims, because it's not just about one single fact, but it's just, there's a lot behind that. So and doing so, I think that it's also important that in our articles, in our debunking articles, we give instruments to our readers. So it's like kind of like explaining how we do our work. In that way, they can trust us, because it's not just that I have the authority to say that one images or one video is false or not, because I don't have the authority, but I have the tools. Yeah, and I have the know-how to do so. So like it's not that I always have to do that, but I always have to like give you instruments, so that everybody is capable of doing their own fact checking at home. So I think that also like the educating part is quite important. So like all of this media literacy word, we have to invest that. And yeah, for example, like at Facta, it is something that we are trying to do. So like we launched like a platform, it's called Dora. And so it's like some videos where like we explain readers how to actually fact check claims online.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for that. And dear audience, you will be having time to ask your question. And I will also invite you to think about this question. What does the role and responsibility of fact checkers involve in 2026? How do you see the responsibility of fact checkers in 2026 coming years, of course. But before that, I'm happy to ask the same question to Rajneel Kamath. Over to you.
Yeah, I think one of the things we saw in the South Asian region with many fact-checking organizations is over the last couple of years, we weren't just fact-checking political claims. We were doing things around health. We were doing stuff around frauds and scams, which is now a very big part of the work that we do. We were doing things against false and misleading advertising, fake e-commerce reviews, fake government ads, climate change. We realized that some of the political fact checking that we were doing was less than 50% of the overall claims that we were checking. The way we now see our role going into 2026 is protecting users online against harmful and misleading information. We really think user safety is a very big aspect of this, because nearly a lot of the harms that happen to them when they're online often starts with bad information. So how can we protect them at that layer? So that's the role that I see. We, of course, have to be educators, because a large part of that is media and digital literacy. And we've seen organizations focusing on young people, focusing on senior citizens and an older demographic. We see the entire gamut of things happening. So a lot of us, when we in the region, now view ourselves also as user safety is our primary goal, and we're here to protect the user, the end user.
Thank you, Rajneel. And from Rajneel to Mr. Peter, the same question I'm asking: what responsibility and role should the fact checkers like play today, and how can they involve on that? Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing is we got to answering that question. We have to be practical. You have some fact-checking organizations, Maldita in Spain, for example, has 50 to 60 members of staff. Many organizations, I think the average size is under 10 around the world. Some organizations have 4, 5, 6 fact checkers. So setting them a long list of things that they need to do is unrealistic. But so what can the wider fact-checking community, not every organization can do everything. Africa Check, when we started Africa Check in 2012, we had 1 intern, 1 member of staff working part-time, and a project manager. So there were a lot of things we weren't doing. It now has many more members of staff and it does many more things. So size is an issue. Second point is how you think you have effect as a small organization is primarily, I think, by specializing in what you do best and then working with others, leveraging that knowledge to work with others who can help you in countering the problem. So there are entire lobbying industries. Fact checkers can't become part of the lobby. There are education systems. Fact checkers can't teach every child in the school, but can leverage the knowledge that they gain of the fact checking and the disinformation environment to work with those. So the first thing to do is to identify colleagues, partners, allies. But we talk now about the information integrity community, which is not simply fact checkers, it's also access to accurate information, people who support freedom of expression. Fact checkers are being unable to work in many countries in this region and in others as they would wish to because of lack of freedom of expression. So we need to collaborate with those people. If I go back to what Africa Check tried set itself to do when we did have enough staff to think about that, we said we have 4 goals. So 5 goals. One is identifying misinformation, harmful misinformation, disinformation, enabling access to accurate information. So we set up a little project to do that and we collaborated with people. Promoting the practice in the wider media community, our allies in the wider media community. That was something again, that's not us taking over their job, that's us collaborating with them. Promoting these skills amongst the public, so that's using our fact checks to try to teach fact checking, working with education departments in where they agree to do that to promote these skills. So these are all things we can do, and seeking corrections. What more do we need to do if we have the resources to do it? Argument checking, not simply fact checking. There's a development of that we could talk about. So how you identify a factually false narrative and check that, and then producing data on the work that we do. Because to go back to my first point is that the value that we have in our work is the data we have about misinformation and disinformation. We do not leverage it, and we are throwing away the opportunity to fund our work by failing to do so.
Thank you so much, Peter. I would love to ask our audience here who already collaborated with other organizations when it comes to fact-checking work. Can you just raise your hand to check? Okay, we have few. Okay, good. The second question, have you done any data production on your work? Okay, we have few also. Okay, we'd love to hear from you later. Don't forget that we will be having a few minutes for your questions. So from the audience, Peter, I'm not saying that many already collaborated with organization or did data production, but I think this is an opportunity also to encourage them to do so. This is really important for fact-checking work. I will go back to Daniel Bramati, same question. What responsibility, what role for fact-checkers?
We recently in Brazil, we did an investigation about doctors who were famous for spreading misinformation about vaccines during the pandemic. And now they basically invented a new disease. They changed the name of long COVID to spikeopathy. And they even published a paper in a journal about this new disease. The paper were retracted weeks later because it was rubbish. but they were selling a new treatment to this disease. They were selling courses. They were making money on misinformation. So we did this investigation. We published it with proof of what they were doing. And the impact was huge. The health minister of Brazil said, why the platforms are doing nothing about that? Why the medical association is doing nothing about that? And he's now suing these doctors. So a concrete impact on the issue. So I'm giving you this example to say that we did not act as litigators or police investigators. We just did good journalism. And we showed that other actors who are also responsible for the good environment, for the preservation of the information environment, they were not doing their part. So maybe they should rethink their role and not us. That's my answer.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And we'll be talking more about your experience, your legal work also. And thanks for mentioning the importance of also fact-checking on vaccine. Again, a question for the audience, who already worked on disinformation, on health disinformation, let's say, related to vaccine, to COVID, or any other disease? We have many here. Very good. That's fantastic. And thanks again for sharing with us. I will go back to Francesca because she worked already on AI. I would love to hear from her about her work on that and her recommendations. And my question for you, Francesca, as you are presenting Fact and News here today, from detection tools to provenance standards, what are practical verification workflows do you recommend for newsroom and fact-checking centers that must verify high-stakes audiovisual materials in real time?
Yeah, okay, so AI actually became quite a problem for fact-checkers in the last month. Because actually we saw this giant spread, and that's because the software became better and better. And now it's really hard to identify an AI video from a real video, of course. And we have to take in mind that users actually, use their social network and they just scroll and scroll. So maybe they see a video from 2 seconds. So it's, I don't know, what can you actually see in 2 or 5 seconds? So since this software became better and better, people actually trusted to, actually started to believe about these AI videos. And the thing is that if we think about, I don't know, maybe funny dogs that do funny things, it's not really a problem. It doesn't have a big impact. But if we think that people cannot recognize a fake dog, how can they recognize a deep fake from a politician? For example, in Italy, we had these cases about the deep fake from a politician like Giorgia Meloni, our prime minister, Matteo Salvini, and they were saying that they invest in some platform to gain money, and the deep fake were actually pretty good. And actually people trusted this deep fake, so they gave money to this fake platform, so they were scammed. So that's that's something to think about. And for example, because of this experience, we Facta decided to give this problem to the politician, saying them that we need more action about in a legislation level. And also another problem that also affect our prime minister, they were deep fake news. So right now there are a lot of this software where they are just about pornography, and of course women are the total. I think it was like in the 98% of the victim. As I said before, I think that giving instruments and tools to our readers is one way, because now the platform are not doing enough. Even the software, they are talking that they just put some label on it, but there are millions of software where you can actually delete this label. So it's not enough. So I think that even like on a legislation level, I think that we need to intervene.
Thank you, Francesca, from FACTA for bringing this. From AI to legal protection, to editorial independence, to international cooperation, I would love to come back to you, Daniel, because you have a lot of experience on that. I have a question for you. Hope it's easy for you to answer. So for you, Daniel, what legal strategies and international solidarity measures actually protect independent fact-checking like work without sacrificing editorial independence?
Judicial harassment is a very serious problem in Brazil. We have recent examples of people who were suing journalists in different states of the country in order to make it difficult to the person to defend herself or himself, because you have to have a lawyer in every city where the process is initiated. So we identified this problem, and the Brazilian Association of Investigative Journalism opened a demand in the Supreme Court regarding this case. And we have a victory. We had a victory in May of this year. They declared, no, this is totally unconstitutional. Lower courts cannot do that. So this was important. But when I think about international cooperation and international examples, recently we have this case in Latin America. There's this organization from Cuba. It's called El Toque. They do journalism in exile. They are spread all around the world. They are in Europe. They are in Peru, Chile. And recently they received threats from the Cuban government indirectly, basically saying that they were considered criminals. If they go to Cuba, they go directly to jail. And if they travel, depending the place they go, they are subject to extradition to Cuba. I'm not sure if that's true, but the threat is there. And how can you react to that? We don't have any way of facing this problem effectively today. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer to your question, but I'm here to highlight the problem. When we are dealing with authoritarian regimes, we don't have the necessary tools to defend our profession.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for bringing this experience when it comes to legal protection. You are bringing the legal aspects, and our guest, Peter Conliffe-Jones, is bringing the researcher aspects. And the next question is for you, Peter. I would love to hear from you, because we are seeing today coordinated campaign that aim not just to mislead the public, but to create entire fields of research, climate science, public health, election studies. So for you, Mr. Peter, what practical measures can researchers, publishers, and fact-checkers take to shield academic and policy research from targeted disinformation?
So being very practical and keeping it short because I'm mindful of time. So fact checkers and universities in Europe have been invited to bid for EU funding to try to investigate the narratives about, around disinformation as censorship, disinformation research as violation of academic norms, and so on and so on. So, I mean, I know that because I'm with some fact-checking colleagues. I'm part of one of the people bidding for that funding. Somebody will win it. Somebody will hopefully do a good job. That puts out research and evidence and argument about that. So organizations are trying to do something to look at the narrative, if anybody is listening. Fundamentally, the thing, I mean, one of the things that struck me in what Daniel said was what worked in Brazil around the coup, the attempted coup that happened, was strengthened by the work of fact checkers, but required the assistance of other arms of civil society. So it required the assistance it required a judiciary. It required the army to stay in the barracks. There were fact checkers, journalists, media, we have the power of persuasion. We don't have the power of the law or the gun or other arms. I think that it is a pity that the fact-checking community very often speaks to itself. I think fact-checking is, to me, the epitome of the idea of freedom of expression. Is people putting forward a false argument, people put forward a correct argument, you have a debate, it's on evidence. Where is the freedom of expression community jumping up and down about people being banned from visiting countries because of the field in which they work? A totally legitimate field. So we need allies, and the practical thing we do at a country level, at a regional level, at a local level, is people who are concerned by academic freedoms. We ally with them. We can ally with the people. We reach out to them. If they're not reaching out to us, they should be. We reach out to them.
Exactly. Thank you, Peter. Just a reminder for our audience, you will be having in few minutes the opportunity and the time to ask your questions to our panelists today. So get ready for that. But before that, I'm happy to come back to Rajnail Kamath from India, who is bringing today the South Asian perspective. And my question for you is regarding the adaptation strategies. What adaptation strategy have proven from your own experience, like from news checkers? So what adaptation strategy have proven effective regionally in training, community-based verification or platform engagement, and how global fact-checking networks can support local actors for that?
Yeah, I think when you look at the South Asian context, we've had success in different pockets of activities that we've done. Also, given the fact that the continent is very, very huge, and as fact checkers, we don't have resources to operate at that scale. But some of the things that have worked very well, for example, is our WhatsApp helpline, which we do for any member of the public in each of these regions can forward us something, and we will fact check and get back. We've now expanded that to help them identify scams that are happening to them in real time. So if you've gotten a phone call from somebody, you can send us that phone number and just give us a couple of words saying this person is saying my identity has been misused to open a bank account that's gotten proceeds of money laundering, for example, and we would be able to immediately tell you, hang the phone, do not engage, that's a scam. So WhatsApp is something that's worked really, really well. I think another thing that works well for fact checkers is, at least for all of us, is sometimes we just quietly put our heads down and do the work. Our aim is to reach out to the audience, to the public, not necessarily make noise on Twitter or on social media to get the wrong kind of attention, which then ensures that you can't do the job that you have to do. So that is something that we've seen is working out well, where you silently do your work, reach out to your audience in places that somebody is not necessarily keeping track of. We do have a regional network. It's called the Trusted Information Alliance. It's a coalition of fact checkers, civic tech, and media organizations. We've seen that this regional coalition is able to understand the nuances and context of what we see happening locally, and we're able to adapt to those contexts in a really good way. It's not meant to be a replacement of the IFCN, for example. It's supposed to complement the work that the IFCN does, but with a more regional flavor. It's there to help organizations collectively bargain, for example. I'm not saying it happens, but it's meant to collectively protect interests, collectively meant to put forth our point, and collectively build allies, which we don't have at all. How do we do that as an organization versus individuals trying to do that? So the regional alliance really helps there.
Thank you, Rajni, for mentioning the importance of regional alliance. I totally agree with you with that. I will finish with this question. I'm going to ask this question for our panelists and also you, our audience today, if you want to answer this question or if you have other questions. So for you, and sorry, you need to be brief because we need time to take other questions for you. What are like 3 concrete actions that should fact-checking organization prioritize in these next 12 months? You can answer whatever, like in few seconds, if you can, like actions. Wherever, yeah. Daniel Bramati? Yes.
Number 1, we need to learn new techniques and to get to know new tools for detecting AI-generated video and audio. Number 2, we need to identify new funding sources to significantly reduce our reliance on big tech. And 3, we must mount a vigorous and articulate defense against the absurd accusation that we act as censors.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Who wants to answer? We can hear from our panelists if you would love to.
So I'd partner with other organizations who have resources we don't have, partner with other organizations who have resources we don't have, and partner with other organizations who have resources we don't have.
Thanks for being brief, Danielle, and concise and precise too. Rajnail?
Yeah, I think Daniel and Peter have already mentioned some of them. Top priorities for me would be, one, of course, is start talking about the value of fact-checking, not just from the political context, but the actual impact that we make to users' lives. I say this specifically now from the frauds and scams that we've saved them actual money. That's when the public realizes the value of what we do. So start talking about the how we've impacted users' lives. That's number 1. Number 2 is I think we need to start building allies. We need to start having more friends. It's important to distinguish between talking to, let's say, if you want to do advocacy work, you can talk to lawmakers, but you need to understand, and they also understand, that your editorial independence is priority. And the very fact that you talk to them doesn't mean that that's going to be compromised in any way. And the last thing I would say is technology is evolving very rapidly. We need to understand where technology can help us, but also understand that it's going to make the problem a lot bigger, especially when you think of AI, for example. AI is not going to replace the job that we have. It only makes our job harder. So how do we adapt?
Thank you, Rajnail. To Francesca now.
Yeah, I'll steal the first answer to Danielle because I think that we need to be updated every day because of these new technologies. And also we need to do a lot of advocacy to the policymaker and the platform, but also I think that we need to strengthen the cooperation between fact checkers all around the world and journalists.
Grazie mille, Francesca. The floor is open now for your question. Just one thing, in case we don't have time for all your questions, feel free to reach to our panelists. They are still here till tomorrow. So please, if you have any question, any comments, you want to interact with them, you have till tomorrow to do so. We will take the first question. Our friend from here has the mic. Yes.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself and your question, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Khaled Mansour. I'm a member of the Oversight Board, Meta Oversight Board. It's an independent oversight body. It's lovely to see all of you, because after the announcement by Meta in January that community notes will be the system in the US and fact checkers are out, I didn't think this panel will be held this year. So my first question is financial. Now, in January, February, March, when I spoke to some of you, it was all alarming. You're still here. So how was 2025? And what are you practically looking at 2026 beside the great ideas that Daniel spoke about to be sustained? How can you financially, how can your business model change to make you sustained? My second question is rather technical. I mean, your work is extremely important, but as Francesca said, with Newport, migrants have started to be hit and wounded in a couple of hours. Actually, in the first hour after the massive disinformation campaign started. You guys are slow, and your detection methods are not coping with the huge, with Nano Banana and all these other things. They were not coping in Syria as well, not only in Newport. I mean, the Druze started to be killed because of a fake video, couple of hours. after the video is out. So are you thinking of a new business model, again, technically speaking, that can work better, or are you leaving that to other actors in the field? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. The first question was on financial aspect. The second one about a new business model, maybe. I will take the questions, but then I will give the time for our panelists to answer. We have a question here in the back of the room. Can we give him the mic? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Mohammed Al-Mumin. I'm a journalist from Iraq. In MENA region, we have dozens of fact-checking platforms, hundreds of fact-checkers, but unfortunately, daily there is a lot of lies, and simply because lies and propaganda makers are stronger and with more resources. So my question to Dr. Peter is, in Arabic, we say prevention better than cure. Can we do that in Facts on War to make the audience better by awareness in critical thinking? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. Any other question before we go back to our panelists? Okay, I will go back to our panelists to have the answers. Meanwhile, you have like few minutes. You have a question here. Okay, thank you. You have the mic in the end. Thank you. Please introduce yourself so we get to know you.
Hello, my name is Lyubov Velichko. I'm investigative journalist from Ukraine. And I wanted to add the answer to the question you asked on the last question about what needs to be done in the next year. And I think it's also a question what needed to be done 5 years ago. It's obvious that informational GGN is the thing which need to be grown until from the childhood. And Peter told that this is not the fact-checker's role to educate all children. And I agree, because this is the role of government and schools. And so it's important to raise the awareness of governments, to make the media literacy as a subject since the first grade, because look, since what age our children take telephones in their hands? And so the question for everyone is also, do you raise this question to your government? And maybe some governments already do some efforts to put this subject of media literacy to schools. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. It's a hard task, I know that, but you have only 1 minute per each to answer that. Let me summarize the question. The first one, the question was on financial aspects and technical aspects, and shall we think about a new business model? The second one was how we make our audience aware, and the last question, do you raise these questions about media literacy to your governments? Wherever you want to, Daniel, you have the floor.
First one, basically, if we are working for big techs, they are influencing our work in terms of what we prioritize. And that not necessarily is aligned with what is really important for the public. So in Brazil right now, we are trying to think of a new project regarding vaccines. Why? We have a strong anti-vax movement. Why can't we be the anti-vax movement? We are trying to build a coalition, and with that, trying to get new funding from other sources who today don't see fact-checking as something important. But in this case, I think this is the most important aspect of fact-checking: reduce harm, as Peter puts. So this is one way we are trying to do it this year.
Yeah, I'm going to try to reply to the second one. So I'm like, it's hard to fact-checking news in a really reduced time. So that's the hard thing, because it's really easy to spread misinformation, but it's really hard to contrast it. So I think that debunking itself, of course, it's not gonna be the solution, but it's gonna help. So I think that pre-banking maybe can help a lot, and the media literacy also. Like if we if we teach people how to read the news, how to recognize it, maybe we can change something.
Yeah, I think just in terms of financial sustainability, I will admit that it's extremely hard. But the financial sustainability questions that fact checkers face is no different than what many media organizations also face today. Media are struggling to survive. Fact checking is a subset of that. We've seen different models come up, right? One, of course, is there is no doubt that many fact checkers are too heavily dependent on big tech. But if you look at audience contributions to fact checking organizations, at least in South Asian context, the reality is because we like being, non-biased and non-partisan, nobody wants to pay money for that. But if you have a view or if you take a side on a particular issue, you're more likely to raise money on that. And even then you plateau very quickly. What fact checkers are doing, like many media organizations, is trying to understand and experimenting at this point, what are the various diversification they can do, what are the sources that they have. And the last thing, sorry, I know you'd asked about what was 2025 like. From what Meta had communicated, they said that they were replacing fact checking with community notes. It was to start with the US. And for the rest of the world, the program would continue as is. Community notes is yet not rolled out to different parts of the globe. I do understand they've asked the oversight board for some inputs on what that's going to be. I spent the last 2 days preparing our response for that. You will get to hear from it very soon, and you'll see me coming to you as well.
Thank you, Rajnil. Because we need to leave the room, I will give you a few seconds, Peter, and I know it's a hard exercise. Please bear with me.
We have to prove the value of our work. Saying we fact check misinformation isn't enough. We have to explain why that matters. We do a bad job on that story. The point about we're too late is so we can identify the effects of misinformation that has cumulative effect over time. So in a talk with some South African colleagues, I talked about drying the tinder. If you have misinformation that dries out the tinder, it's easy for a spark to cause a fire. We can identify that well ahead of time. Media literacy can then respond more quickly to something that is produced within, we can't respond within minutes, but media literacy can.
Thank you so much, Peter Conliffe. Jones, just let me remind you that you have the time to ask our panelists here. They are still in ARIJ 2025 till tomorrow, so feel free to reach to them. Thanks a lot for coming here today, and thanks to our panelists from Rajnil Kamath from News Checker, to Francesca Capocha from Facta News, to Daniel Bramati from Esadao Verifica, to Peter Conliffe Jones from Westminster University. I was with you, Rabbi Balwi from BN Check News. Thanks a lot for coming today.